All right, so I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:35. Can we have the roll call, please?
President Alvarado,
Here.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yeah, here.
Director Weiner, Director Stanley, I thought I saw her on here. Director Stanley, are you there?
I see her.
Yeah, I see her too. Director Cepeda.
Here.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 1B, Pledge of Allegiance or observation of moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
Of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty
liberty,
and
and justice for all.
next item, please.
Item 2, approval of agenda.
Okay, what is the will of the board?
I have something to say.
All right,
I wish to move item 5A, 1, 2, and 3 to the Planning Committee for further review and discussion after a closed session evaluation of our board attorney's performance with him and a reevaluation of our general manager's authority to spend $50,000 per vendor per fiscal year.
well, I don't think one has anything to do with the other, so you want to make those two motions?
Okay, so I want to move items 5A, 1, 2, and 3 to the Planning Committee for further review and discussion after a closed session with our board attorney to evaluate his performance.
All right, is there a second on this motion? Is there a second? Seeing no second, the motion fails. What is the will of the body? Can I have a motion to approve the approval of the agenda? Motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Can I get a second, please? Can I? Vice President Sutter? Thank you. The item,
Alvarado, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Director Weiner.
I think if you hit the space bar, you're supposed to be on mute, but that wasn't working for me.
You have to hold it down while you speak.
Yeah, I was on a different app trying to look at 5A, B, and C, and I have no idea what they are. So I couldn't second or even judge what we should do. What part of the agenda are they, since it's not a?
It was 5A, B, and C, but the motion failed, Director Weiner.
That's only because I was not, well, that may or may not be because I was not able to speak. I wanted to hold up the moving on because I hadn't had a chance to look. So is that the action items 5?
Yeah, action items are 5, Director Weiner.
Okay.
Can we ask, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, my apologies.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I just had a point of order, which was I haven't had a chance to look at what they were. And since
All
they're
right,
the
you want Director Weiner to take a look at those? I'll give you the look in front of me.
I'm good with the outcome.
Okay, so the item's been moved and seconded. Can I please have a roll call?
President Alvarado.
Can we
Yes.
have discussion?
Discussion on approval of agenda?
Yeah.
All right, I'll allow it. Go ahead. Make it quick, please.
Well, I would like to hear what Mick has to say.
Well, this is approval of the agenda. I'm happy to comment.
Go ahead and comment.
Okay, this is approval of the agenda order, so it's a little peculiar here, but I would like to have the board review my performance in a closed session with the 5 board members and myself. I can see some things that are going on, and I would like the board to schedule that closed session discussion. I have a lot to say, and I would like to A, hear from the board, and B, have the board hear what I have to say in that type of circumstance.
Okay, we'll take it under advisement.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
No.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 3, public comments, items not on the agenda.
Do we have anyone, any public speakers? Sasha? Any public
No.
speakers?
I do not see
I
anybody.
don't have any. Sorry
Okay.
to interrupt. I don't have any.
All right, so you don't have to read that. Just go on to the next item.
Item 4, consent calendar. 4A, approve the minutes for the special board planning committee meeting held May 11th, 2020, the global warming committee meeting held May 12th, 2020, the special board meeting held May 28th, 2020, and the regular board meeting held June 3rd, 2020. 4B, approve the proclamations for the months of October, November, December 2020. 4C, adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager to increase the purchase order with Accounting Principles, Inc. for an additional $15,000, revising the not-to-exceed amount to $233,000 for temporary staffing assistance. 4D, adopt a resolution ordering an election for the Board of Directors for West County Wastewater District for November 3rd, 2020 general election.
Thank you, Sasha. Can I have a motion to approve the consent, the consent calendar?
I would like to pull item 4C, please.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item C?
I'd like to make a motion. I have one comment, please.
Sure, go ahead.
And it's actually a little point of order because in 4B, I think we're missing one proclamation.
Okay, which one is that?
We're missing Juneteenth. I don't see it. Or was that covered in the last meeting? I don't remember.
If it was,
That was already approved.
yeah.
Okay, that's why I'm
It was
asking.
previously approved.
Okay, I'm fine. I'll give you the motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of C, please.
Okay, can
I would like to pull E,
there is,
Veterans Day, November 11th, 2020. I would like to pull that item.
Pull it?
you'd like to pull the proclamation?
Yes. This is we're doing the consent calendar, right?
Yes.
All right. And so I would like to modify the Veterans Day declaration. So I need to pull it, but I can add a whereas clause.
Okay,
If the board
Mick.
would entertain one.
Okay, Mick, can we just pull that proclamation or to pull the entire piece?
Need to pull the entire beat. It's not only about that proclamation.
It's not only about that proclamation. Okay. All right. So we're gonna. Okay. So can I get an amended approval of 4A and 4B?
Sure.
So moved.
Okay. And the second
Seconding, because I hear that I think it was Cheryl.
is that Vice President Sadif?
Yes.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded for items 4A and 4D. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. So next item is I guess let's take the items that we skipped over in the consent calendar. So let's go with item 4B, which is moving over to the action calendar. Director Weiner, go right ahead.
I'm E. I think D was Sherry.
No, I'm C.
About the proclamation, that's B. We pulled the whole thing, so you need to incorporate your comments on the Veterans Day proclamation.
Okay, so I would like to add a whereas clause to the veterans. And I'm really lost as to what we're doing, but that's okay. Let me move on, and then you can explain it to me later. Whereas veterans, I would like to add the following whereas. Whereas veterans serve to defend our nation, we must honor their service by not sending them to war on false premise or wars of aggression. And that would be included as one whereas in the many.
Okay. Do I have a motion to do that for Director Wiener's proclamation on Veterans Day?
I so move, but I also wanted to add something to that proclamation thing.
Okay. Let's take care. Is it the same proclamation that Director Wiener's talking about?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's already passed. It's World Ocean Day, which was the 6th of June. And perhaps the Global Warming Committee might have one or two.
Director Stan,
Huh?
you're about a totally different thing. We're talking about Veterans Day here.
I thought we were just talking about proclamations.
No, we're talking about the proclamations for October, November, and December. The one in June has already been passed.
Okay.
Okay, so I need a second or a motion to approve Director Wiener's additions to the Veterans Day proclamation.
I make a motion to approve all the proclamations with the addition from Director Wiener to Veterans Day proclamation.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, we have it. That has been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Wiener,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next item, please. Item 4C on the action calendar now. Director Stanley,
I think it's
You want-
forced on the consent that got pulled.
Yes.
but we're moving it to the action calendar. So, Director Stanley.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Am I the only one hearing for noise? Hello?
I can hear you.
Here, we,
I think you might have a bad connection. I don't hear any other noise.
Okay. I am flummoxed about this additional ask for money, and I've asked a bunch of questions, and I've gotten answers that didn't really answer my question, and I'm not understanding why we just approved $95,000, and now we're 5 months later we're being asked to approve another $15,000, and I don't get why staff didn't anticipate expenses, and I don't understand why we're being asked at the last minute. So that puts us in an awkward position, I feel like, to have to approve something whether we've had time to really think about it or not. And I have all kinds of questions about, I thought we were saving some money and with ADP, and it just doesn't, none of it makes any sense to me. Does anyone else have a problem with this?
before any other board member ask any questions, I'm going to have Lisa address this issue. Lisa?
Yes, I'm actually gonna, I can just start. I'm not sure where the question specifically is. We did in pretty lengthy detail address this question Director Stanley asked earlier in the day. The additional money is for the temporary, there are things that we anticipated happening that haven't happened in the time frame. This is for the remainder of the temporary position that is in the finance department working on payroll as we close that function out and move it over to ADP. The contract was only just recently approved. There were 2 positions under this authority. 1 position was hired permanently. There was additional fees related to having to, when you hire from a temporary agency, there is a fee for that conversion. That's almost about the same amount that we are asking for here. This money should take us through the implementation of ADP. So, you know, I don't know what Director Stanley's additional questions. We answered several of them. So unless you were more specific, maybe we can address those specific questions.
Well, I asked for the math because I wanted to understand the math. Because if a ratepayer asked me to explain this, there's no way that I could explain it. And the way it's phrased in this agenda item, it says to the end of the fiscal year 2020, which is in 2 weeks. But now you're talking until the implementation of ADP, which in an answer that you gave me is 12 weeks off, which is a whole nother.
I apologize. I apologize. So I misspoke. I believe that this 15,000, and Justin can answer it better. The 15,000 is through the end of the fiscal year. We anticipate needing the position for a couple months into the new fiscal year, which starts July 1st, so that we can complete the implementation of ADP. That can be done under general manager authority, so it would be a small expenditure through that time. It would not have to come back to the board.
Lisa, what is the fee for the employee that we hired?
Justin, correct me, but I believe it was 12,000.
That is correct.
So you're asking for 15,000, 12,000 of that is going to this agency for hiring the employee, correct?
Correct.
Right.
So then that's another 3,000 that you need to go to the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Stan, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve this item?
I move that we approve this item.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is the action calendar, and we're going to take these item 5A one at a time. So Sasha, don't read them all at the same time. Read the first one first.
You got it. 5A, consider and approve ad hoc committee recommendations. A1, motion to include the ad hoc's recommendations on best practices for competitive bidding and service contracts to the district's purchasing policy upon completion of staff's revision to the policy to be approved by the board at a future meeting.
Okay, before we start on this, I'm going to ask for questions. First, I'm going to go to Director Stanley.
You're asking me a question?
No, I want you to, if you have any questions on this motion, please do so now.
Yeah, I think that this part should go to committee for further review, and I think that I think service contracts are unique and different. I think and are treated differently. They're not the same as like a construction contract. Perhaps, Mick, could you help me out here?
Can I comment, Mr. President?
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, service contracts are typically hired on the basis of demonstrated competence. They are typically not bid, and they are typically terminable at will. So you hire you hire and terminate your consultants as you need. And that's typically how it is done, and then that's what the law provides.
Okay, anything further, Director Stanley?
Yeah, I would like to, I want to go back to committee. I want it sent to committee so that we can talk about it some more.
Yeah, that item already failed. Would you like to propose it again?
Yes.
Okay, so Director Stanley's making a motion to send this back to committee. Is there a second? Seeing no second, the motion fails. Director Weiner, questions?
I have no questions. As I spent many years as a consultant, and the contract did not have an end date, but there was always a statement of work which did have an end date. So the contract had to be renewed every period. This was business to business, and I have no familiarity. Well, I did work for an agency, a public agency, and it did have an end date on the contract. So my experience is that that I've had both the contract with an end date and all the information that the committee has said is missing from our contracts, and never had an open-ended contract. That's for sure. All right,
Okay.
That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Director Weiner. Director Cepeda, any questions or comments?
I have no questions. Just the only comment is in regards to the item that I brought up. So I wanted to find out, I don't know if you originally remember, a few months ago, I asked for a list of all of our contracts, service, project-based, on-call, equipment, etc. I think it is important for the board to do our due diligence to know what we're paying. And I was more curious on one specific item, but then once we had the list, it opened up everything that we're doing, and it asked even more questions. So I was asking for our benefits, because benefits are very important and they're very expensive. They have a big chunk of our budget. From there, the list then showed we had a lot of evergreen contracts that have been in place for a long time that we haven't ever had a chance to renegotiate. Right now, our agency has money in the bank, per se, but a lot of other agencies don't. They're struggling. So we have to make sure that we're using the money as best as we can for our taxpayers and for our community, especially as we're dealing with COVID going forward. We don't know what that's going to do to the taxes coming in or not coming in. So we have to really be looking at a process, and we have no process. When I asked, what do we do for the contracts we have out there, they're a little bit of everywhere. As we need something, something comes up, it stays there. I'm looking at the list right now. We have, as needed, evergreen, 1 year. We have them a little bit all over the place. So I think that's really important that we have a process. We have a lot of processes that haven't been updated. We have a lot of documents that have no process. I would like for us to be a little bit more process driven, so we know what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And as we're getting to goals that we've been discussing, that these processes are driving us towards the direction of the goals that we want to meet. So again, I think it's really important that we're looking at all the contracts to make sure that we're getting the best that we can. And it doesn't mean that we have to change. Having a process just means that we are out there doing the best that we can for our taxpayers, that we can say, we went out, we bid, this is what came back. Every other public agency that I've worked with has had a process or has a process that has always done this. So that's all that I would say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sutter, questions, comments, please.
We spent a lot of time on the ad hoc committee looking at these documents. iterated, the lack of process, the lack of documentation. And as you all know, this is what I do. And I've been doing this for quite a long time, negotiating these kind of contracts. So I find it disturbing that we're spending public monies in this way, and that we have been spending public monies in such a way that has not only evergreen contracts, but in some instances, no real contract at all. And no real contract, contracts or statements of work that have no dates to them. They have no end dates at all, automatic renewals, terms that are very wishy-washy, that don't have any real terms to them. And that is quite disconcerting, especially in the spend of public money. And that's not something that whatever happened in the past happened in the past. And it's not something that we should continue to do. There's a saying that says, when you know better, do better. And so that's what we're going to do moving forward. That's what we were charged with doing on this ad hoc committee, and that's what we're bringing forward. And I don't see any reason to keep going back to committee to try and please something that's not pleasable. We've identified the holes and the gaps, and now we bring it forth to you with that information based on the fact that we've talked to staff, we've looked at it, and we need better processes that match the policies that this board has put in place. There are still some policies that have not been looked at in quite a while that need to be ironed out as well. But the practices of this district, the practices don't even align with the policies. So what people practice makes no difference. You have to go by policy. You have to go by regulation, and we need some straightforward processes so that we're not flying by the seat of our pants, which seems to be the case in most of these. Grab a contract, grab a contractor, whoever you want, and there's no justification for price. There's no assurance that it's a fair and reasonable price, because we're just rolling along with whomever at the moment. So we need to make sure we're doing something and that we can justify it each and every time, and that there's fair, full, open competition for each one of these contracts, no matter what it is: services, materials, supplies, construction. It still needs to be a process. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Sutter. I too share your thoughts and that of Director Cepeda. This is and Director Wiener. This has been a long time coming, and I thank you and Director Cepeda for your work. I have no questions. I'm looking for a motion to approve item 5A1.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the item's been seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Wiener,
Yes.
Director Stanley.
Well, I have a question, a point of order, I guess, if I may, President Alvarado.
Director Stanley, during the vote, please do not try and do a point of order. I'm going to allow it this time, but next time, please, if you have a point of order, please do it before the motion. Go ahead.
Well, my question is are we going to ask our board attorney to review this at all, or are we just having staff and an ad hoc work on this?
Point of order, that has nothing to do with this vote.
Well, wait a minute. It's asking to put this onto the staff revision policy, and it's not saying who's reviewing it. Because the next time we'll see will be part of a thing that we're supposed to pass. And if we don't go to committee, and at what time do we actually get to talk about any of this?
All right. There will be attorney working on this. Let's move on. Please continue.
So Director
I'm
Stanley,
sorry. What?
what is your vote?
Well, I didn't hear what President Alvarado said.
I said there will be an attorney working on this. Please
An attorney.
continue the vote.
An attorney.
Yeah.
So not the board attorney.
Director Stanley, can we continue, please? This has nothing to do with the vote right now. Please take the roll.
Director Stanley, what is your vote?
No.
Director Cepeda?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next item, please. Item 5A2.
2, motion to direct staff to issue requests for proposals, qualifications for services identified in attachment B that have never been competitively bid or have not been bid in the last 5 years.
Director Stanley, questions, comments?
Can you come back to me?
Yeah, Director Weiner, questions, comments? Director Weiner? Director Weiner?
Harry, you're still on mute. There
Okay,
you go.
I'm switching back and forth between my agenda and my comments on my agenda and the meeting. So where are we exactly? Are we still on A? Oh,
No, we're 5A2 right now. We are on A, but 2.
let me see what I have written as a response to this. I think it's approved, but let me look.
Director Weiner, do you want me to come back to you?
That would be helpful.
Okay, Director Cepeda, questions, comments?
I'll have a few comments here. So I'm looking at the list, and for the first time, we are able to see some of the spend amounts to some of these services. I know the staff did a really great job in the first list, but it wasn't until we went through this process that we found out how much we're paying for some of these services that we did not have before, just because we had no process. We had no process, so we had no real reason to figure these steps out. So again, both Director Sudduth and myself and the staff that worked on this ad hoc committee really drilled down on every single line item by line item to figure out the best process and what was missing. What do we need going forward? So for this here, and if you look at the list that we're going to be putting out, some of these have not been put out in a long time. And if you compare this list to the list brought to us before, I believe was in February, if I'm not mistaken, maybe it was before COVID, you will see that some of the amounts are now shown where they weren't shown before, again, because we didn't have a process for it. Now we do, so I hope that the board can approve this so that we can then do our due diligence for our taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sudduth.
I spent a lot of time looking at these things, so my comments are evident in the documentation. I stand by the fact that we need full and open, fair competition for every contract when in the use of public money. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Sudduth. Director Stanley.
I still think service contracts are unique and different and should be treated differently. But I don't have any questions at this moment.
All right, thank you. Director Weiner.
No, I want to thank the committee for doing all this work. A process is better than no process by about 95%, and any improvement to the process is about 5% of the work. So they've done 95% of what is needed to make an open process and supply the board with information they need to monitor the district spending. So I appreciate their work.
Thank you, Director Weiner. I too appreciate the work of the committee. Again, I say this process is necessary and a long time coming. So please, can I have a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve item 5A2.
Thank you, Peter. Second.
I second.
All right, we have the motion has been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next item, please. 5A3.
Motion to establish an ad hoc committee to develop a request for proposals RFP process for general legal services and appoint members in accordance with the board policy that states membership on all such committees and commissions shall be recommended by the board president and approved by a majority of the board present and voting. If the board does not approve such appointments, the board president shall have the authority to do so.
All right, so for this committee, I'm selecting myself and Vice President Sutter as the executive leadership team of the board, and I'm going to have Director Cesar Cepeda as the alternate. So can I get a motion to approve 5A3?
Make a motion to approve 5A3.
Yeah, second.
All right, that has been moved. Discussion. Director Stanley?
No.
No, I said discussion. Any discussion, questions?
Yeah, I have no discussion.
Okay, Director Weiner?
No, I'm good.
Director Cepeda?
No, thank you.
Vice President Sutter?
Not at all.
None either. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next item, please.
Item 5B, adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager to accept a grant of funds in the amount of $644,709 and enter into an agreement with the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority for the North Richmond Shoreline Living Levee Planning and Preliminary Design Project.
Thank you.
So-
Director Stanley, any questions?
Well, I had asked Lisa a question, and I didn't get an answer. She didn't know where the money was.
That's
Maybe
actually
comes
not,
not here. Yes. I have no discussion.
So Lisa, you want to respond to that?
yes, thank you. We didn't say we didn't know where the money was. What we responded with was that the board allocated last year $500,000 to do something that was unspecified. Without something being specified, because there was nothing at that point, the money sat in the reserve. So I don't think we said that we didn't know where the money was. We just simply didn't allocate it because there was nothing to allocate it to at that time, and it was in the reserve. So I just want to clarify, it wasn't lost money.
Okay. I just wanted to know where it was.
Well, it's in reserves.
Does it have like a little Post-it note next to it that says this money's for this or to be determined for whatever, or can it be?
No, it doesn't work that way. Money gets moved into a specific line item when there's a place for the money to be spent, or it's budgeted in that way. It wasn't added to the budget in that way. It was a last there was nothing to allocate it to. It's like the equivalent of sitting in your savings account, and you move it to the checking account once there's something to spend it on, which is what can happen now.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Mhm.
Director Weiner, any questions?
I have no questions. I do have a statement.
Right ahead.
I would approve, I hope we approve this. I want to thank the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority for the grant. I want to thank Lisa, Andrew, and staff for pursuing the grant. I want to thank Jim Neugebberger for hosting and representing the district at the North Richmond Shoreline Resiliency Stakeholder Working Group meetings. It's really hard just to say it, let alone do it. And I want to thank you to Resilient by Design for their work on the concept of the horizontal levee. And I want to thank Supervisor John Joya for his efforts on the horizontal levee concept. By taking this money and working on the plan, this will establish WCW as a serious player in dealing with the global warming crisis. And I think it's a really a fantastic thing that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. President Sutter?
We forgot Cesar. Did you forget Cesar?
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Cepeda.
I echo what Director Weiner said. Well said, Director Weiner. Thank you for saying it.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sutter, thanks for the save. You up.
And on that note, I'm going to double echo.
Wow.
Yay! Very well said. Yeah, I agree. I think everybody and I agree. Harry said it, so I'm done.
All right, thank you, Vice President Sutter. And I want to triple echo what Director Weiner said. Thank you, Director Weiner. And thank you for staff and everyone that worked on this. Can I get a motion to approve, please?
I move we approve.
Yeah, we give you the honors. I second.
All right, the item's been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Sutter,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley, Director Stanley,
Well, yes,
she say yes?
yes.
I think, yes.
Okay. Director Cepeda,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, next item, please.
5C, adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager to commence the public incentive program for efficiency of sewers pipes program and approve the addition of $400,000 to the budget beginning in fiscal year 2021 to fund the pipes program on a recurring basis.
Thank you. Director Stanley, questions?
I would just like to make sure that we have the wording that we reapprove the amount annually in case something goes on that we need to pull it back.
Hey, Mick, can we add that to the agenda or no?
You can certainly add it to the resolution approving the item.
Okay. I see no issue.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
may I comment? So the program won't be funded unless the board approves the budget each year anyway. So,
Okay.
I mean, you can certainly add it, but it has to be approved every year as part of the budget process. So, and in the materials that we have to the public, it states that it's subject to the approval of funding each year.
All right. Thank you for that clarification, Lisa. Director Stanley, any further questions?
That wasn't a question. I still like the idea of adding that language.
Okay. Director Weiner.
I'm for this item. I approve of it. These requirements all seem reasonable and necessary, but maybe intimidating to a person not familiar with dealing with bureaucracy, or a person all too familiar with bureaucracy in a negative sense. The district should create a way to ease the process in order for the incentive program to be universally beneficial. Have we investigated if there are any non-governmental organizations that can aid low-income homeowners with home repairs? Are there non-governmental organizations that will help community members navigate through matters like this? And do any cities in our district provide such services? Does the county?
All right, Lisa, you want to answer this? Do you have staff to answer questions?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Michael to address that question.
Hi, Michael Savannah, Infrastructure and Planning Department Manager. If you don't mind, Director Weiner, can we take your questions one at a time? There were 3 of them, and I heard them the first time, but I want to make sure I address them. Your first question was about non-governmental agencies that provide assistance to low-income families. Is that correct?
Yes. I assume they have to be low-income homeowners.
You assume that for the non-governmental agencies, not for this program, correct?
Yeah, no, I'm saying what can we do to help ease the burden of this process? I think the process is totally correct, and I think all of the requirements are necessary. I just see it as formidable to people not used to doing things like this. And also, the money up front might, might be too much for people to do it. The low-income homeowners, and I think probably we need some low-income homeowners to step up too. So I was wondering if there's any agencies out there or programs out there from the city or the county. And when I said non-governmental, I meant not city, not county, that have money to help help homeowners.
Yeah. So in regards to this program, the intent of this program is to improve our I&I situation and reduce as much I&I as we can in the district. There was not a low-income component to this program, and as such, you don't see it included here. It's definitely an idea and a concern that has come up, and if the direction is given, we can definitely investigate a low-income assistance program. The thought was that if we did that, we would do it as something separate from this program, as there isn't, you'll notice in here, a means test or anything of that nature, because we were not focusing on just assisting low-income folks as much as incentivizing reduction of I&I, particularly in the highest I&I areas of the district, so that we could reduce how much I&I we're getting into the system and reduce the probability or possibility of illicit discharges at the plant, which come directly from I&I. I guess that's a long way of saying we didn't include it in this program. We can do some more investigation if so ordered, but that was not a part of what we did with this. There was some conversation about loans and those sort of things, and I think that we talked about that with the board when we brought the PIPES program discussion during our I&I presentation. But the intent of this was not to address the low-income areas.
Yeah, I specifically wasn't asking about us doing a program like that. I may be wrong, and Mick could speak to this, but I think state law says that we can't use any of our taxpayers' money to subsidize other taxpayers. And so that's not what I'm thinking of. What I'm thinking of is, when you come to the desk, or when you read about this, then there's some resources at the bottom of the explanation of what the PIPES program is that help you navigate all the requirements and you know, help you if it would be an economic burden to take on the replacement by pointing you to outside agencies and other monies that might be available, or other people who just help other people go through, you know, bureaucratic things that they're not familiar with. So I wasn't thinking of us doing any of that work. I was just thinking of, you know, some additional information to supply any of our customers that they could use to make the process easier for themselves, and also maybe help fund them from another source.
So I understand what you're saying, and I wasn't, and maybe I wasn't clear. What I was saying is we had not done that level of investigation and included it with this. We had kicked around the idea of discussions around a loan program, which would be separate from this, and not a loan from the district, but someone else providing a loan and us providing the information. So we've done a little bit of that investigation, but separate from and disconnected from the PIPES program.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I think I'm finally getting it, and or I should call you, because it's a formal meeting, Mr. Savannah. So let's get that on a future agenda, so that we can, in addition to doing this, which I approve of, we can have that that discussion and maybe that investigation go on.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Weiner. Don't forget to bring that up under future agenda items. Director Cepeda?
I have no comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sutter?
I'm good.
All right. I'm good as well. Can I have a motion to approve this item?
I move we approve the item.
Second, please.
I'll second.
All right, the item's been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next item, please.
Item 5D, adopt a resolution approving fiscal year 2021 operating budget update, salary schedule, and GAN appropriations limit.
All right, do we have a staff report on this?
We do. Justin has a
Yes.
short presentation.
All right, thank
Good
you.
evening, President Alvarado.
Evening.
We'll be, Gina, if you'll pull up actually, if you can pull up the presentation, or rather I can. We're going to pull up the
I'm
presentation.
trying.
Yeah, really quick.
I've got it.
So as Gina's pulling this up, I will go ahead and get started. So I'm Justin Lovell, Administrative Services Department Manager. Tonight I want to give you a brief presentation on our fiscal year 2021 budget update. So last July, the Board of Directors approved a 2-year budget, which included fiscal year 20, which we're ending in this month in June, and for fiscal year 2021. So as part of a 2-year budget, we're bringing forward an update. There are some of the assumptions that have changed, and so we're just bringing those changes to the board. So I will start off on the revenues. On their sewer use charge, there is no change. Those rates are going to be staying the same as were in fiscal year 2020. We'll be coming to the board in the July 1st meeting for the formal adoption to put the rates on the property tax rolls. And so that way we'll have that $26 million in revenues for fiscal year 2021. There are the 2 additional revenue sources, just to note, as the board just approved a few minutes ago, the SFA Estuary or Measure AA grant for the Living Levee project. So that is a revenue that we have added on here, as well as the annual revenue for the East Bay Municipal Utility District secondary affluent water agreement that the board approved several months ago. That would bring us an additional $204,000 of revenue a year. So next slide, Gina, please. So moving on to personnel expenditures, there is one additional position that has been approved this last fiscal year as part of the budget. So there's an additional operations supervisor. So that brings us to a total of 73 employees plus 5 directors. A few of our assumptions on the personnel side have changed. So that is increased it slightly by about 500,000. There are some modifications on moving our capital.
He's coming to you.
On moving our capital program staff into the capital budget, their salaries, because they're directed specifically on our CIP program. We have increases in our retirement benefits. That includes PERS and OPEB. The assumptions were a little bit lower than what they are now. We have actuarial updates this last fiscal year, and so that has actually increased significantly, but we're able to, that works within our budget. So our personnel budget is $15.7 million. The next slide, please, Gina. On the non-personnel side, we've kept it static with the exception of we're adding about $1.8 million in several initiatives. So move that on, Gina, please. Next slide. And so let me just go through this 1.8 million. There's the Living Levy grant, which the board just talked about, the PIPES program, which the board just approved. That is about 1.1 million of additional budget. We're working on several projects within administration that I've been looking at. As we're moving to a more mobile workforce, we have additional needs with security updates and software and hardware that we're going to be working on this next fiscal year, so it's about $150,000. We will be conducting another sewer user fee rate study this year, so we've put aside $50,000. And as well as, we're looking at our software licenses, making sure that we have the right products and upgrading software systems that are older. We have about $250,000 associated with that. And lastly, we have $250,000 associated with our office reconfiguration. So this is office furniture, cubicle space. As part of, we've been working on a office space planning this last year, and with the new working realities of COVID-19, we need to readapt our space for staff going forward. And so that is our, so it goes up to our 1.8 million. Next slide, please. And lastly, I just want to touch on reserves. We did touch about, there are existing reserve policies that the board approved in 2015, such as the SRF loan. We need to keep a loan, that's part of our loan documents. There's an operating capital reserve, which is approximately 90 days worth of operating revenue, insurance reserve, capacity improvement reserve, and equipment replacement. So those are the existing reserves that the board has adopted policies. Staff, as we are looking at additional reserves, we will be coming back to the board this next fiscal year with the specific policies. So these are just kind of placeholder names. We'll be getting some additional feedback from the board in the future. That there has been some suggestion at board meetings about an emergency reserve. As this last year, we have seen several emergency projects come up, and as well as setting additional dollars aside for facility upgrades, software improvements, so we can make sure that we are maintaining and keeping our software and facility up to date, and we're not deferring any of the maintenance. And so those would be our recommendations. And then the undesignated reserve is that there is no board set aside for that right now. That's 5.7 million. So we are making sure that we're putting our money aside as needed. We'll be coming back to the board on that, but we're estimating that at the end of fiscal year 2021, we would have approximately $18.2 million available in our reserves. And some of that is restricted, like the SRF loan, but a lot of that is within the board authority. So tonight, this is happy to answer any questions. We're asking you to adopt our budget update, the GAN appropriations limit, as well as our position control list and the salary schedule for fiscal year 2020. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, let's start off with Director Stanley. Any questions?
Are we going to receive all the paperwork that says this is the capital improvements and this is the operating budget, so we have line items that we can see, or are we just going to have this little summary thing here?
For this year, we have this summary. We do have within our finance system the full budget and all of its account numbers. I'd be happy to provide additional detail as you would like for the board. We did have the summary page that was included as part of the staff report that breaks it down by the type of expenditure. But if you would like to see additional detail, we can provide that to you as well.
So if I can also add that the second year of a 2-year adopted budget, we don't provide the same level because we're only providing really what's changed. The board adopted a 2-year budget, so that's why you also don't see on the same level or the same document, the same volume of documents, I should say.
Okay.
All right, Director Weiner, questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question. So we were getting some rent for staging a construction company's equipment, etc. Are we still doing that, or is that done?
We are still doing that. That hasn't changed from what the budget was last year, so I didn't mention that as part of the update. So that is still one of our budget line items.
So that's a revenue
that is a revenue. I don't recall off the top of my head exactly the amount, but that is in
and there was some talk that might be where we would find the money for the pipes program. So that's why I brought that up. And then is undesignated, is that a category required by state law as a reserve?
Yeah, so essentially the Government Accounting Standards Board, the GASB, there's specific rules on how it's worked. They're essentially down, the way they categorize it for accounting purposes is really committed and uncommitted, or restricted and unrestricted. So we're showing this undesignated more as a budgetary reserve. When I'm calling that undesignated is that the board has not designated that money for a specific purpose, and so it's at the discretion of the board on how we would spend those particular funds.
So I know we've budgeted for projects over time since I've been on the board, and some of them have never begun, even though we budgeted for them all along.
Mm-hmm.
Is that money in the undesignated, or is that in other buckets?
So for budgeting purposes, I'm just showing you the end of fiscal year 2021. That makes the assumption that we spend our full capital program. So we do have money designated for the full capital program as projected and as approved by the board. We're anticipating about $26 million still available to spend because they haven't started all the projects, but that money is set aside so that we don't spend it for something else.
All right, so the undesignated is just there.
Exactly, yes.
That's a good position to be in. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Weiner. Director Spada.
No questions for me at this time.
Thank you, Director Spada. Vice President Selif.
I'm good. I'm more interested in knowing when can we expect the 21 budget?
Well, I mean, this is the fiscal year 21. Our next 2-year budget, we're starting planning for it in the next couple months. We would anticipate to have some draft numbers in spring, late winter, spring of 2020, 2021 to show our next 2-year budget.
Yeah, okay. Because you're mentioning, yeah, because it seems like we're still adding to the budget that's ending the end of this month, and then we're adding these other stuff. So I was just wondering on that. Okay.
Thank you, Vice President Sutter. I have no questions, so can I have a motion to approve this, please?
I propose we adopt a resolution approving fiscal year 2021 operating budget update, salary schedule, and GAN appropriations.
All right, can I get a second, please?
Make a second.
All right, the item has been moved and seconded. Please take the roll.
President Alvarado,
Yes.
Vice President Suddeth,
Yes.
Director Weiner, Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
Yes.
Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next item, please.
Item 6, information reports. 6A, review and discuss changes to the proposed 5-year strategic plan.
All right, Lisa, who's going to give us a report on this?
Okay, so we have Tara. She's, I think, been here listening. I did send out, well, she's going to bring up a brief PowerPoint. I did send out a pretty detailed email last Friday, and the intent originally here, so I just want to summarize quickly. The intent was to bring forward the strategic plan this evening for adoption. However, staff sat down to go over what the board has been doing over the last several meetings when you've been talking about the strategic plan. And in those discussions, we had quite a few changes for the staff-driven portion of the strategic plan, which is really the implementation of the board's strategic goals. And so we made some changes to that. And rather than ask the board to approve the strategic plan before you had an opportunity to see those changes, we wanted to give you a brief overview of those changes. And then we will be bringing back the strategic plan for adoption at the next meeting, the first meeting in July. So with that, I will ask Tara to take it from here and talk to you about those changes.
All right, Tara, please. Tara, you're on mute.
Tara, you're still on mute.
There, am I good?
Yeah, can hear you
Okay,
now.
good. All right, and everything looks beautiful? I hear myself echoing. All right, I'll just speak quietly. There we go. All right, so tonight we're going to discuss what you guys inspired. Just kind of giving you a run through of the timeline really quickly. January 27th, all the way through June 11th when we had the action plan workshop. That initially was intended to go into the strategies and develop individualized tasks for each strategy. What it ended up doing was really generating a fairly intense conversation that was inspired by all the conversations we've had with the board and how they reflected into the strategies. So really briefly going over the changes requested. And we did everything up until the strategies. So core values, move that, goals, change those, strategies. This is where we got into that conversation. So Director Weiner had talked about how this one strategy was confusing because it was under strategic goal 1, but should it be under another one as well? And that's where we really started to look and discuss how these strategies really impacted the goals and making sure that they really aligned. We did make the other changes to the document, but today we're going to talk about the changes that we made. So now trust has been moved up. We changed this to saying making significant strides toward becoming a carbon neutral enterprise. And we changed this from efficient to effective. So those are the changes that were requested on that level. Now getting into the staff work session, we felt like strategies were really something that we wanted to show the measure of success to the board. So it wasn't really a strategy to accomplish the goal, it was more of a step on the way to accomplishing the goal. So it became an objective. So we wanted to make sure that the definitions really reflected the actuality and the reality of how we were now using this plan. We also changed actions to milestones so that we could present the board with something that was really measurable. Why did we make the change? Because it was starting to be a square peg in a round hole. And we wanted to make sure that it really was useful to staff, it was really useful to the board, it was really useful to the organization as a whole. And so therefore, we decided to change a couple things and really streamline it, make sure that the alignment was 100% accurate all the way down, and provide this piece. So one of the things is to really ensure accountability, and to do that, we needed to create additional measurable components to those strategies, which again turned them into objectives. So just to highlight what's different, all of this stuff is the same. Objectives are high-level statements that outline exactly what you want to achieve with clearly stated deadlines that support the overarching strategic goals. So we've now started to add those deadlines. We've also created milestones. So milestones serve as markers to provide the board with a way to measure progress. Because we wanted to, some of these objectives are huge, right? So you need smaller pieces to hold your staff accountable to see year over year whether or not they're actually making progress on those objectives. Like creating a climate action plan, there's a lot of steps, and that is a multi-year process. But in order for you to see the progress over time, we need to identify those milestones so that you can have that report, know what's happening, and be engaged in the process. So this turned the strategic action plan into an implementation plan. It also, we streamlined those things that were slightly repetitive or were sort of sub items to major overarching pieces. And we discovered that some of the strategies weren't expansive enough. So they were like, check in today, or they were too small. So we wanted to make sure that each objective reflected something that the executive staff was really trying to accomplish on a high level, and then ensure that those other pieces became milestones of that overarching piece. And still other objectives were revised to add clarity, for example, the assessment plan piece. So we knew what we really meant and how it really supported that goal. Here is an example of a before and after, right? So the strategic goal was to identify and leverage information and data management system to ensure responsible infrastructure management and promote an efficient and innovative organization. We changed that to effective. And there were 10 strategies, everywhere from develop an IT master plan, which is a big thing, to explore tools to increase organizational efficiencies, including these very specific ones. So the comparison wasn't really matching. So we changed that to objective 1 is develop an IT master plan. That is a major component. There are pieces of the previous strategies that are included in that. And so it became from 10 to 6. And we didn't lose any of those. What we did was include those into these other pieces. And I want to show you how that's really done. So now the implementation plan looks more like this, where we have the strategic goal, the objective, the milestones. So you see, evaluate IT hardware to support organizational needs. Now, that's starting in fiscal year 21, and it won't be done until fiscal year 23. But you'll have these milestones that they'll report on in fiscal year 21, so you know what's happening, where the progress is. And they're reasonable things for your staff to achieve in that time frame. But you're not just never hearing about it until fiscal year 23, or just a general, we're here in the process. So you've got some very real milestones that they'll report on, as well as their progress on the overall goal. So I want to show you what that looks like. So here's a reporting example. So we've got this strategic goal and the objectives. The objective, IT hardware. Now this is fiscal year 2021. So they've completed these very specific milestones, which are in the implementation plan. Overall progress is 50% complete, and we're on track for 2023 completion. So it becomes much clearer in terms of reporting. And then if we're looking, and that's a quarterly report, so this is what happens every single quarter. And then at the end of the year, we show all the things that were completed in 2021. We're now 75% complete, and we're definitely on track for 2023. This is what we would be looking at in terms of the overall progress for strategic goal 4. So after you went through a slide that looked like this and went into each objectives, you'd be able to see the progress on all of the different objectives kind of together to show how far along you were on achieving that overall goal. So everything is now incredibly aligned and really runs right back to that strategic goal that you guys have discussed and established. Finally, we wanted to show you the logo. So now kind of all that's strategic plan stuff. Moving into logo before we get into long-term stuff and questions. We added that little glossy piece to the logo. So this is kind of where we are with the logo. So I think you guys are really going to love that. And then we added this tagline. And the tagline is embracing the future by planning today. So you see it kind of everywhere. And they don't need to be together. They need to be one with the other when it really makes sense. So on your letterhead, on your strategic plan, on all of those components. But if you've got like a hat, it's not going to have a whole bunch of words because it starts skipping. I was like, I designed it once and it was insane. And then finally, long-term success. And what does that look like? So it's going to be that quarterly progress check-in that we showed you earlier, and then an annual strategic plan review, which will be, do any of those strategies now objectives need to be adjusted to achieve the goals, and have the goals of the board fundamentally changed anyway. So we do a check-in to make sure that we're still on track annually, just to make sure, a very brief, like, we haven't fundamentally changed as an organization, right? Okay, then we're going to keep going. And then next steps. Approval of the plan in July. So you'll be provided with a new plan with new objectives, and then we'll be print and digital copies will be made available so that you have access to them if you need them, but digital primarily will be the option of choice. Any questions?
All right, let's start with Director Stanley. Director Stanley?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so Tara, I find it somewhat frustrating because we never get a full thing to look at in advance. And it seems like we get the notes from the last time we talked, but we don't really get to look at the full thing in its entirety and say, yeah, we like this or no, we don't. And even when we agree on something like embracing the future by planning today, well, that's not what it says, and that's not what we agreed to last time. So it's just a little frustrating because we'll agree to something and then you tweak it. And it's like, well, it didn't feel like we needed to have it tweaked the first time. And I like to look at the whole thing and have time to mull it over rather than little bits that have been adjusted but I never see the full thing. So are we going to get that in time to be able to look at it? And can you change the embracing the future by planning today back to embracing our obligations to the future by planning and preparing today?
So Tara, let me respond to the first question and then you can respond to the second. So Director Stanley, we've actually provided the entire draft strategic plan at every single discussion. We did not include it today because we were not talking about the entire strategic plan. We were really providing an update, and you will absolutely get a copy of the full strategic plan for review at the next, in preparation for the next meeting as we have previously. So this is actually the first time you haven't seen the full draft. It's been attached to each of the discussions.
I understand. I've been having problems getting information that's emailed to me. But again, why did we change the embracing our obligations to the future by planning and preparing today? Why did that get changed?
I think we probably just misunderstood or we picked up the wrong thing. We can certainly put it back if that's what the board would like. I mean, this is a little shorter, which lends itself easy to displaying easier. But if the board wants it to be that way, that's the board's decision. That's fine.
Well, I thought we agreed to that last time.
Well, yeah, I already answered. So.
All right, well, why don't we let the rest of the board comment on it? Director Stan, do you have any more questions?
No.
All right, Director Weiner.
I really appreciate that this is a work in progress, and that when you see it laid out and you work through it, that you come up with critique. We all come up with critique, and then the critique is taken to heart, and the parts that the staff needs to work on are reevaluated. And I really feel like it's starting to take on a very logical form, and being an ex-programmer, logical form is what it's all about to me. So I'm really liking the progress that you're making in making the whole work and creating a hierarchy of things that you've defined so that each one leads to a lower level and more detail. I really like that, and I also like embracing the future by planning today, because I don't see any difference between that and what Sherry said, other than the wordsmithing. And yeah, so I look forward to seeing the plan in its entirety, and I'm so far very impressed with how you decided to proceed. I know there's no template for strategic plans, and it's good that this one is getting meat on its bones and turning into something useful. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Weiner. Director Cepeda.
agree with Director Weiner again. You're on the roll.
Controversy, God.
Yes, we're on the roll there. But I do love the milestones that you've put out there. I'm just scrolling up to one of them here. I do like that because we have really lofty goals, but of just putting it out there that we want to be carbon neutral, for example, by 2031, but we don't know how we're going to get there. We don't know the little milestones. You know, if all of a sudden we're going to be saying Happy New Year and it's 2031 and we're still nowhere near them. So I like the milestones. I like that we're going to be able to take into pieces. And this board might or might not be here all the way until 2031, and that will, the milestones will also allow future boards to be able to create the little milestones that they wish to tweak it a little bit, so it's not so hard coded. Because I think it's a really good strategic plan that we're building, that hopefully future boards will take, and they can maybe again tweak their little milestones if they needed to. They could always look back and say they agree with Director Weiner as well, back when in 2020. So that's my comment. Thank you. But good job, Tara and staff.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. Vice President Sutter, questions, comments?
Oh, man. Becoming a habit, having to agree with both directors Cepeda. It'll ruin my reputation. But, I'm going to have to co-sign both their comments. This is not being recorded, is it? Somebody might come back and bring this back on me, but I like it. I in particular, I like the flow and I like the colors. I like the feeling that I particularly get looking at the design. I personally like the changes. I agree that embracing the future we're planning today we said, I just looked at my notes, we said for it to be wordsmith. So I'm not quite upset about it. I'm not unmoved by the fact that that's the direction that we gave, is for some more wordsmithing to be done to some of these pages and some of the responses that we gave. I do like the graphicness of the milestones. I mean, I like having the milestones, but I also like, can we go back to that page?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so is the implementation right before this? So is this part, the milestones and how they're being completed, and then it's the next part? Because I think both of these can feed into our ability to gauge what's going on, not only as a manager, but as an overall. Can we go to the next one? Overall, what's happening is throughout the district, the graph, yes. Because I think what we found this year is that we had to adjust some of our objectives and some of our goals, because we were left trying to figure out, you know, what was realistic and what was being done and what objectives needed to be adjusted. So I like being able to see this graphical interface between, you know, the goals. And I think you had another one where it was lined out. This is the next page.
So we have
one more. No, back.
Like this is the quarterly.
I like this
then
one.
This is the annual. Yeah. And then this is the overall.
No, there was one more where you had it was with words. So I think it's back.
Oh. Here. This is all
this one.
The different objectives.
So there's like an overall objective where you can go through, and I think it lines up good with the goals that we set for the general manager, but also for our overall plan that we have for the board has set. And so it does have a nice rhythmic flow, but it also has a flow that is set with the general manager's evaluation. And so I like how we can take that and flow them all together. So I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that type of process flow so that they can meet together. And I don't think that existed before, where that they can mesh together and show a more of a realistic type of implementation. So that's what I like. And so, yeah, I think that's the best feedback that I can give you on that. And the logo does look much better. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, President Navarro.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Sutter. Tara, I just want to say that doing this plan is fairly difficult when you have to work with 5 different thinkings on this, and I think you've done a stupendous job of putting those all together. And it sounds like the majority of the board is on board with what you're doing. So all I can say is I look forward to seeing the final product, and I want to thank you for your hard work and that of our staff as well. Next item, please.
Item 6B, receive the Board Attorney's Statement of Services for services provided in the month of May 2020.
I'm here.
All right.
Ready? Yeah, this is just a point on the agenda where you review my statement for services. It's fairly self-explanatory. I did send out my typical kind of lengthy explanation of things that I thought needed more explanation. So normally what I would do is answer any questions you have. We were going to do the Brown Act presentation tonight, but the agenda was so long it's been put off till I think the next meeting, perhaps the meeting after that.
Okay, questions, Director Stanley.
I have no question. No questions.
Director Weiner.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Director Cepeda.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Vice President Sutter.
Yes, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, I do have a question on number 5, Mick. The 5920 Planning Committee agenda included a draft or proposed revised Board of Directors meeting policy and procedures. And I guess this was done at the request of Director Stanley, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, can you tell me why we had to spend this amount of money on an issue of the Planning Committee of which Director Stanley is an alternate, if I'm not wrong about that? Who gave you direction to do that? Was it her?
Well, yeah, she asked me the question, and directors are entitled to ask for information and services from the board attorney. She asked for it, and I provided it.
Okay, and she also asked you to attend the meeting, the Planning Committee, because normally you don't attend committee meetings, correct?
That is correct, unless somebody asks me, and that the practice has always been if somebody asks me to participate. The way the policy works is I'm supposed to attend all meetings of the board, and I typically don't because most of the time you don't need me. I know that somebody needs me if they ask me to be there.
Mm-hmm. I just found it a little bit strange because, like I said, she's not a member of the Planning Committee, and I think that you probably just could have answered her questions in an email or a phone discussion.
I just do what I'm asked.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for the explanation. Next item, please.
Item 6C, receive a project closeout report on the Sonoma Street sewer installation.
All right. Who's giving us this?
Hi, this is Michael Savannah again, the Infrastructure and Planning Department Manager. Armando Hodge is here. He is the project manager that managed the Sonoma Street project, and he's going to give the board a closeout report this evening.
All right. I'm assuming this is going to be a brief report.
This will be a brief report.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Armando Hodge, and I'm an engineer 3 at the West County Wastewater. I'm very pleased to be giving the Sonoma Street sewer installation closeout presentation today. Next slide, please. So before I get into the details, I'd like to give a brief overview of the presentation. We'll start with the background. We'll move into the scope and timeline. Then we'll go to the outcome, challenges, and lessons learned. We'll discuss the fiscal impact, and then I'll wrap it up in a summary slide. Next slide, please. So the project background. The project was located on Sonoma Street with the bounding cross streets being McBride Avenue and Solano Avenue. The intent of the project was to increase the capacity of the sewer lines by increasing the diameter of the sewer lines. The 2014 Corolla Master Plan made us aware that this work was necessary, and also due to the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board's inspection report, the deadline was pushed up to December 31st, 2019. The benefits of this project were to reduce the risk of sanitary sewer overflows and subsequent state fines. Next slide, please. So between May 28th, 2019 and December 9th, 2019, several pertinent services were provided. Envirotech International Corporation, also known as ETIC, provided soil sampling, analysis, and asbestos concentrating reporting services. Kister Savio and Rye, also known as KSR, provided site survey and design services. Darcy and Hardy Construction provided construction services, which I'll outline in the next slide.
Armando, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm going to ask the Vice President Sutter to take over the meeting for a second.
Oh, no problem.
No problem.
You'll be back shortly.
Okay. So Darcy and Hardy completed the construction items below. I'll go ahead and list them, and then the next 3 slides, I'll show some pictures that'll provide a better context and a visual representation of what we actually did. So we reconnected 6 sewer laterals. We replaced 7 standard manholes with 7 truck manholes. We replaced 30 linear feet of 10-inch line with 18-inch line. And we replaced 1,540 linear feet of 12-inch line with 18-inch line. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of the lateral to main connection. So this basically shows how we transport wastewater from a structure, like a house or a business, into the collection system. So here you see a 4-inch PVC sewer lateral connecting into an 18-inch sewer main. Next slide, please. So here you see a very diligently working Darcy and Hardy employee creating the bottom portion of a manhole. So right now he's shaping the concrete to allow us to visually inspect the flow when opening up the manhole cover. Next slide, please. So here you see the inside of a new trunk manhole, which is a large manhole. The difference is that the standard manholes are 4 feet in diameter at the base. The trunk manholes are 5 feet in diameter. We use trunk manholes for any pipes 15 inches or larger, and also if the depth is over 10 feet or deeper. So right there at the bottom, you can see the opening, which is actually the same size as the pipe diameter, coming in and also exiting the manhole. You also see the top part of that the employee was shaping. That's considered to be the shelf. That's just outside of the channel. You also see the stairs, which are also known as rungs. They allow CSO employees to be able to safely enter and exit the manholes. They're also able to tie off equipment, such as tools or flow meters or anything necessary to be able to efficiently perform their jobs. Next slide, please. Successful completion of the project made it a win-win for West County Wastewater and its customers, which is always our aim as staff that's servicing the public. We improved the capacity for several sewer segments by increasing the diameter of the pipes, which allows for more wastewater to flow through. By doing this, we reduced the risk of sanitary sewer overflows, which are SSOs, and subsequent state fines. We also achieved compliance with the previously referenced report that required us to complete the construction by December 31st, 2019. Next slide, please. So we encountered several challenges. The unforeseen subsurface conditions. There were basically large boulders that obstructed the path of the installation of the pipeline. So until we broke the rocks up into smaller pieces and allowed a clean path, we were unable to install the pipes which were necessary as part of the project. We also had to discuss and set up bypasses to maintain continuous wastewater services. So basically, we had to plug the pipe and make sure that wastewater didn't go into the areas where we were working, into those pipes. So we plugged it off and also set up a rerouting system to reroute the wastewater around the area we were working, further downstream. Next slide, please. We learned a lesson that we have already implemented into future specs that we've been working on. So we made more of an effort to clearly delineate between additive items and base items. Our previous language was that the additive items may be deleted by the district. To provide clarification to potential bidders, we changed that language to state that it must be approved by the district before the work is done. So just must be approved. Next slide, please. Fiscal impact. The total budget amount was $1.7 million. The total project expenses were $889,039. The project was completed under budget for several reasons, which I'll go into, but the biggest one was receiving very competitively priced bids. That was really the largest gap. Also, staff has discussed how we will be capturing staff time during the project, and also how we will be budgeting staff time in our budgets. Additionally, there is a large amount budgeted for professional services. It was a conservative estimate because we weren't certain if we were going to have asbestos present in the soil while we were digging. So we put a large line item in there to account for additional services that might be necessary, such as crosswind monitoring or special disposal of soil which contains asbestos. There were 3 change orders totaling $143,513. One of them is related to the breaking up of the boulders. That was very necessary to be able to install the pipe. The second change order was to reimburse for the City of Richmond encroachment permit. The third was additive items such as trunk manholes, which were necessary because of the large pipe, and also, mostly for that, also for T&M work as well. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the project was successful. We completed it on time and under budget. The main goal was to increase the size of the sewer lines, which we did. We upsized the capacity deficient sewer segments, thereby reducing the risk of sanitary sewer overflows and state fines. We completed the construction within the time amount allotted by San Francisco Bay Water Quality Control Board. And also would like to reiterate that the project was delivered on time and under budget, which is always staff's aim. And with that, I conclude the presentation and would like to open up the floor for any questions.
All right, Director Stanley, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Director Weiner?
Thank you, Armando. Very clear, and I learned something about sewers from the presentation. Thank you.
Director Spada?
No, thank you for delivering on time and under budget. So thank you for that, for you and for your team.
Thank you.
Vice President Sutter?
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, well done, Armando. Thank you so much to you and whoever worked on the project with you. Really appreciate the report.
Thank you very much. It was a team effort.
All right, thank you. Next item.
Item 6D, receive a report on West County wastewater's baseline inventory of greenhouse gas emissions.
All right, who do we give giving this report?
This is Michael Savannah, Infrastructure and Planning Department Manager. We're going to give a report on the greenhouse gas baseline study that we completed. There will be myself, John Haig, and Dana from SAGE to give you all this report. I don't see the presentation up. It's still the questions from the last presentation. This presentation we gave to the Global Warming Committee, and we're now bringing it to the board. The GHG baseline is the first step in our efforts to complete the goal of becoming a carbon negative organization by 2031. One of the reasons that we needed to identify our baseline is because we need to know where we are before we can plan for and measure success. So once the presentation comes up, we will run you through that and obviously be open to any questions at the end.
Is there a problem with the report being displayed on the screen? Anyone?
I believe Gina is working on getting that report up. She gives us just 1 second.
Guys, sorry, it was up on my screen and you guys are not seeing it. I will get it up for you in just a moment, please.
Gina, I have it available, so I'll put it up for you.
Please. Thank you.
There we go. Here we are. We're ready to go.
Thanks,
all right.
Justin. We can go to the next slide. I've already done an intro of the presentation. And we'll keep it brief, President Alvarado.
Please do.
GHG baseline. GHG stands for greenhouse gas. And again, it's a baseline inventory of the emissions of the district. And it's the first step towards becoming a carbon negative enterprise, which is one of our goals. Next slide, please. So a bit of background on the GHG baseline study. Sage Energy Consultants were brought in to help us out. They've been doing a number of almost 100 feasibility studies and have developed specifications for 50 or so large-scale projects. Dana Cole, who is here to help us with this presentation and give you guys all of the technical information that you like, has over a decade and a half of experience in emission studies and has done some studies for some very notable clients in NASA, BAA, QMD, and the California Energy Commission. Next slide, please. I'll ask Dana to take over the next couple of slides because they're pretty technical.
So hopefully everyone can hear me. Good. Okay. So when one accounts for greenhouse gas emissions, you assign the different emissions to different types of emission sources to different buckets. And they're reported in these buckets when they need to be reported, for example, to the California Air Resources Board. So let me define in layman's terms. I won't read all this slide, but when one thinks of the Scope 1 emissions as the emission sources over which the West County Wastewater District has full control. These are things that occur within your jurisdictional boundaries and things that you have full control over how they're done and where they're done. Scope 2 emissions, in your case, that is limited to your electricity utility. So the emissions occur elsewhere. They are emitted by the electric utility at their power plants, but you have a lot of influence over how much electricity you use. Scope 3 emissions, you have influence there, but they really are not within the West County Wastewater District's scope of responsibility. Your Scope 3 emissions should ideally appear in someone else's Scope 1 emission inventory. That said, you do have some influence, and so, for a complete picture, we are accounting for those as well. The last one is a little confusing. It's the category for biomass combustion or biogenic CO2. And the next slide is kind of an animated slide that explains this. These kind of emissions are not thought to contribute in a net way to climate change, to global climate change. So let me run through this cartoon. So what makes those biogenic CO2 or biomass combustion emissions different? You have a lot of gases in the atmosphere. Some of them are greenhouse gases like CO2. That CO2 gets uptaken by biomass plants through photosynthesis. Then it's incorporated into animal bodies by consumption. It returns to the Earth's atmosphere as CO2 by respiration. We breathe out CO2, or some of that organic carbon is excreted, where by way of the sewer system it becomes the responsibility of the West County Wastewater District. And in your biomass, your anaerobic digester, that organic matter is converted to methane gas, which is then combusted and returned to the atmosphere as CO2. So basically, in summary, this is a closed loop. These are fresh carbon dioxide molecules coming out of the atmosphere, circulating in a short time scale, right back to the atmosphere through these kind of biological processes. Other things can happen, like using fossil fuel, which is carbon that was sequestered under the ground for many millions of years and is now being returned to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Or you can have these biological processes where, the organic carbon jumps off of this closed loop and becomes atmospheric methane, which is a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So we count those types of processes as Scope 1, Scope 2, or Scope 3 emissions, but that closed loop system is the biogenic carbon or biomass combustion, and it really doesn't contribute in an appreciable sense to climate change. At least it's thought not to. Okay, so looking at a summary next of what the West County Wastewater District's greenhouse gas accounting looks like. We have a bar chart, and on the left we show the sum of the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Scope 2 is the utility energy use in a little gray slice there, 380 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. And the rest of it is the Scope 1 emissions, which are attributable to processes at the wastewater treatment plant, to an extent processes that occur within the sewer system, and also fuels consumption for transportation and equipment that are used by the district. Scope 3 emissions occur elsewhere, off-site, and then the biomass combustion is that third bar on the right. We can break this down into a little more detail to see what really comprises these bars, and you can see that those wastewater treatment plant processes, actually let me just say, the biggest categories here in the Scope 1 and Scope 2 on that leftmost bar, the tiny amount of residual nitrogen that's left in the wastewater when it is released into the environment is thought to be converted to a third greenhouse gas I haven't spoken about before called nitrous oxide, and that happens in the natural environment through microbial activity. And it's such a potent greenhouse gas that it doesn't take very much of it at all to make a large impact like is shown here. The next level up is the storage of biosolids. Those are methane emissions that emanate from decomposition of organic matter in the sludge drying beds. And then the next level up is the sewer system. Now those two last categories that I discussed have cross hatches on them, and that's because it's illustrating that those categories you're a little bit ahead of the curve to be including them in your greenhouse gas emission inventory. Guidance that's published by the state or that's offered by the state for wastewater treatment plants does not yet really address these categories very well. But you know, peer review of what we've done here by the Air Quality Management District concurs that the guidance is such that you know, it would be a good idea to include these. All right, moving all the way over to the right where you, okay, no, that's good, that's good. Actually, I guess maybe I should ask, this is all pretty heavy, meaty technical content, and I want this to be accessible to everyone, so does anyone have any questions up to this point? Then, moving on, I think I'm supposed to pitch it off to the next speaker. Is that right, or should I continue?
Yeah, thank you, Dana. I'm going to ask John to help us out with the highlights on this one and the next slide. Thank you, Dana.
Good evening. It's John Haig picking up the next slide. And I guess I get the opportunity to talk a little bit about the highlights. The important things to talk about on these slides are that the largest sources of our emissions, approximately 31% of the scope 1 and 26% the scope 2, comes from biosolids storage and basically our process emissions. And it's an innate and integral part of our operational mission. So we're going to have to deal with those and reduce them as we can, but we may also have to mitigate and or offset them, and we can talk a little bit about that later. Fugitive emissions, which were mentioned briefly in the presentation Dana did, and by the way, Dana, excellent presentation from a technical perspective. Those emissions, they're an emerging science issue, really. We are on the cutting edge, basically, of reporting fully and completely the GHG emissions. You can cherry pick if you choose to, because there are certain emissions that are easier to deal with and perhaps easier to manage and reduce. But the true greenhouse gas emissions picture, taking an unbiased and a full view, I think is the way the board has requested that we go. Process emissions, it's important to understand that they're about 7% of scope 1 and scope 2, and electricity gives you an opportunity. It's about 6% of your scope 1 and scope 2, and that's because we don't have 100% deep green power, which is an option that the board could select, and or offset additional electrical use through the use of solar or other renewable energy sources, which would allow the district to gain traction and be more sustainable overall. On the fleet, the opportunity exists and is growing for vehicles within the fleet to become electrified and to be powered through renewable electricity, which will reduce the approximate 4% of GHG emissions associated to our fleet. It's true at this point that much of our heavy equipment cannot be replaced by an electric version currently, but that is changing, and it's changing rapidly, and electrifying the fleet is something that the district can look into. On-site energy, of course, being the PV and other opportunities to generate clean energy on-site to offset our power needs. Next slide, please. So these basically are the next steps that that we would be looking at as a team to try to make progress in terms of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and to track progress against our baseline as we move forward. Biosolids drying is an area that we can make a lot of progress in, and there is the possibility that the NG project, if approved, would have a much less carbon intense drying process in creating Class A biosolids for soil amendment as opposed to our sludge currently. There's a lot of environmental benefits to not having to haul off sludge and to landfill it as well. Cogen is being explored by the same potential energy project by NG at the plant. There is a possibility for us to utilize more of our combustible gas created through our plant processes by using a cogen process and eliminating our need to do any flaring. Solar, I mentioned. Energy efficiency is a part of this same study of plant and district operations, looking for efficiency and less energy use from our HVAC and other pumps, motors, and plants that are plant equipment that are currently in use. I've talked about electrification of the fleet. Commute reductions is one of the scope 3 emissions that the district has some incentives associated to it that potentially could be applied. The ability to provide for employees to take public transit more effectively or to carpool is a way to reduce the employee commute aspect of your greenhouse gas emissions baseline. And then basically I'd say I would pass it off at this point to Michael with the congratulations of the board of moving forward and getting this step accomplished. It's a milestone, I think, for the district in terms of its environmental work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. We're now open for any questions that the board may have in regards to the GHG baseline. I'd like to make maybe 2 points. One being, when listening to Dana and listening to John and reflecting back on the carbon negative definition presentation we gave you several weeks back, please keep in mind that we are cutting edge or leading the pack with what we are collecting here as our greenhouse gas baseline, as well as our goal for being carbon negative by 2031. So we're open for any questions that the board may have at this point.
All right, Director Stanley, any questions? Director
No,
Stanley.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Weiner.
Yeah, I have a question for Dana. There were references in the report regarding the science of measuring the production of atmospheric GHGs from human activity. Would you say the science is in its infancy, or would you say it is more mature than that? How often should the district reassess its assumption as it works on reaching its goal of becoming carbon neutral or carbon net negative?
I didn't quite catch the first part of your question. I think on a thumbnail, I think you're asking how often should we review the literature to see what information becomes available?
I was more interested in your opinion of the state of the science of studying how greenhouse gases, measuring greenhouse gases. I got the impression from your the report itself that there were many places where there was but one citation, and so that led me to believe that we're pretty much in the infancy of greenhouse gas measurement.
Okay, so I think I'm going to answer the question in terms of measuring emissions and generally uncertainty in the emission inventory. And if we could go back to the bar charts real quick, so I have a visual aid. I would say the biggest areas of uncertainty in the emission inventory are associated with the emissions from the sewer system. I referred to one peer review article that's available on this topic, and it was for a different country, a different type of design perhaps, and I extrapolated to your area. This is an area that I think needs further research in the peer-reviewed literature, and I'd say it's probably, maybe within a factor of 2 to 5 uncertainty. The storage of biosolids, I'm a little more confident in that estimate, but again, muted. Okay. It's an area that could benefit from additional emissions measurements. The effluent residual nitrogen, that emissions calculation depends on an assumption that all of the residual nitrogen in your effluent is eventually converted in the natural environment to nitrous oxide. I think that's probably an overly conservative assumption, and you probably, there's an uncertainty there, perhaps, again, on the order of 2 to 5. But the the estimate for the anaerobic digestion and combustion of biogas. There are some assumptions related to that having to do with the combustion efficiency of the equipment that combusts the methane. And again, that's an area of uncertainty. But, you know, following the best available information that exists and the best available guidance, this is the answer you come up with. Down the road, when you update your emission inventory, we should revisit these estimates and show how the baseline would change just from improved information that becomes available as it becomes published. So your baseline will adjust as the science improves, and then you'll see, you know, the incremental improvements that are just due to the policies that you adopt.
Yeah, so would that be every 3 years, every 5 years? What do you think?
You're on a 11-year goal, right? So if I were trying to meet an 11-year goal, I would want to update my progress at least every 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Weiner. Director Cepeda, please.
It was a really good report. I liked what you had to say. So we're going to be, at least for me, I think we'll be able to use this for little tidbits for our goals. But thank you. It was a really good report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
That means a lot.
Vice President Sutter?
Yes. Yeah, it's a good report, and you said every 2 years? Is that what your answer was to Director Weiner?
If I were in your shoes, I'd want to see an update about every 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this is where what my question would have been. And yeah, I'm fine. I can follow up separately. Thank you.
All right, much appreciated, Vice President Sutter.
Good report. Good report.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Next item, please.
Item 7A, or 7 matters from staff, general manager, attorney. 7A, staff, general manager, attorney comments, communications, reports on issues or matters pertaining to the overall operations of the district.
Yeah, I think Andrew has, he's going to be providing a brief update. So I'm going to turn over to him.
All right, Andrew, please.
I am working on it here, President Alvarado. Where's my video? There we go. Yes, I think the brief update that Lisa is referring to is on the PLA. And I just wanted to assure the board that we are continuing to work with Bill Whitney from the Contra Costa County Building Trades Association. I've got a meeting scheduled with him for next week, and we'll be talking about it. It has not moved along very much over the last couple of months, and the primary reason for that is the COVID virus, and I have been spending a lot of time on health and safety plans and exposure control plans, and I'm the primary on working with Bill on this. So it has not been forgotten, and we've been in communication with him, and we'll be continuing to work on that. And the other part of it is getting information from the other cities. Is the city of Martinez is the most likely format that will follow the most closely, and I'm able to get, I think, a little bit better information from them now. You know, we really need to get a sense of what people's experiences were with some of these PLAs, and primarily the how we implement them and what the impact of implementation is, et cetera. But Bill knows from our discussions that our intent is certainly to keep moving forward, and that's what we're going to be doing over the next month, 2 months, and then hopefully have something put together by early fall.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Lisa?
I don't, Justin, Aaron, Michael, anything from you guys?
No, I have nothing to report.
Okay.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. Michael?
I don't have anything.
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item, please.
Item 8, matters from members of the board. 8A, meeting reports, reports on committee activities, conferences, seminars, and meetings pertaining to the overall operations of the district.
Director Stanley.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. I think Andrew did a really good job at the Resilience by Design webinar that they're putting on to go over the work that we all did 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, I think. And he did a good job representing the district and talking about the levy. And I am attending a bi-monthly training, I guess, learning, it's called a learning journey on Black Lives Matter, and it's a white caucus where white people can make mistakes and learn and become more aware, which I'm thus far am enjoying very much.
Anything further? Anything further?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay. Director Weiner.
I have no reports of any meetings that I've attended for on behalf of the board. I too have been working within the Democratic Party to try to make some progress, at real change. I've been spending a lot of time doing that, and I too would like to mention that Andrew, I saw Andrew give his presentation, and it was a well done presentation.
Thank you, Director Weiner. Director Cepeda.
Nothing to report from the meetings that I've attended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Sutter.
Yes, I attended the Biodiversity and Water in the San Francisco Bay meeting, and the Sierra Club sponsored it. And I'm actually attending another one. I think it's tomorrow. No, tomorrow's Climate Reality. So I attended that one too. That one was, I think it was Saturday, I don't know. I lose the track of days. But similar to today's discussion, the Climate Reality one. So the biodiversity in the Bay, I attended that one on the last time we had a meeting, earlier in the day, and then yesterday I think was the follow-up to, yesterday was the follow-up to that one. If you get a chance, you should try and attend those webinars so that you can see what's going on in our SF Bay area waterlands and wetlands. But the one on the climate change, the statewide meeting was this past weekend, Saturday, and I don't think they was expecting me to really talk to them about. They were talking about greenhouse gases and talking about the reduction of same in our areas, and much of it is relating to transportation and how we can affect climate change. And they talked about wastewater. They talked about wastewater at the biodiversity yesterday in our wastewater treatment plants in Richmond, and they didn't specifically mention West County wastewater because I don't think they really know about it. They just mentioned it. They just mentioned wastewater treatment plant. Someone asked a question about how does that affect our water in the area. And so I was just listening to them. But and we'll be talking about it, like I said, again tomorrow at the climate reality for Contra Costa. Tomorrow specifically for Contra Costa. Last weekend was the entire state. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, that I did bring up, and so I'll be speaking at tomorrow's meeting, is that when we talk about this, we're usually talking about it in a whole, because everybody talks about it as if all things are equal. It's not. That many of our socioeconomically depressed communities are not given the same or equal playing fields when we talk about our waterlands, and when we're talking about what's going on in the communities where a lot of places like a refinery or even some of our treatment plants or water companies are being built and where lands are. So we're talking about it from that lens, where Black and Indigenous, Latino and Brown and people of color homes are located, and how that affects the quality of the environment. So when you talk about reducing greenhouse gases, are we talking about it on an equal playing field, or are we just talking about it in this empty, siloed hole, when we're talking about it treating everybody as if their neighborhoods are all the same?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a conversation we're having tomorrow night in particular. So those of you who would like to participate, if you send me a message, I will send you the information. But that's the specific conversation we will be having around Contra Costa County, and I was asked to represent West County. So I will be speaking there tomorrow night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Sutter. Can I suggest you send an email to Lisa so she can, with the information, so she can send it to the report?
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I have nothing to report at this time on meetings. Next item, please.
Item 8B, good of the order, report on events and activities which may be of interest to members of the board and community members.
Director Stanley. Director Stanley?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Weiner?
I have none.
Thank you. Director Cepeda?
Nope, no reports, thank you.
Vice President Sutter?
Just one. Friday is Juneteenth, the 19th. And they're having, just the biggest thing that they're having is meeting at 10 o'clock, and the Port of Oakland. They're shutting down the port for the entire West Coast, shutting down all the ports just to show the power of what is the economic. My husband happens to be longshoreman, so I can tell you that. They're also having something at Oscar Grant Plaza at 1 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, they're meeting at SSA Terminal to meet there, and then at 1 p.m. everyone's marching over to Oscar Grant Plaza. But all weekend, we're also having something going on. There's lots of events going on. But I was on a call earlier. It kind of coincided with this one. They're asking all businesses to show solidarity in the Still Not Free movement in shining lights, red, black, and green lights for Fridays through Sunday. So I don't know if the district has it or not, And I know we don't have a red, black, and green flag, but that's what's being, to shine the red, black, and green, Black Liberation flag, Black Liberation colors, because until everybody is free, nobody's free. So that's the movement that's going on, and that's my announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Sutter. I have nothing on future, I'm sorry, on good of the order. So next item, please.
Item 8C, future agenda items, informal observations and inquiries regarding the business of the district or requests for placement of items of interest on a future agenda.
Thank you. Director Stanley.
I'm reminding Harry about something. I've asked before, and I'm asking, oh, I know what it was. I was asking, could we investigate having a vendor that is, looks for grant money? And the reason that tied into Harry was because he was looking for money to help out low-income people on the pipes thing. So I'm still putting that out there. And I would like to revisit in a closed session our giving our general manager $50,000 per vendor per year authority. Remember, Mr. President McNeil was very much against that. And I would also like to have a closed session to evaluate Nick.
Okay, Director Weiner.
Okay, so I virtually attended a seminar on prudently and proactively managing pension liabilities in today's volatile environment as part of CSDA's legislative days. And they stressed some strategies to save money on the unfunded accrued liability, or UAL. And I would like a presentation to the board on our UAL and how we might save our district and employees money in dealing with it. Also, I was asked to remind the board at this point about discussions of how we can help our customers navigating the pipes process and offer them some ideas on how they can fund it, find funding for their projects. And then thirdly, I wanted to second Director Stanley's request that we get a review of Mick's work in closed session on the agenda.
Thank you, Director Weiner. Director Spada?
This time I have no agenda items to request or motions to add agenda items to the agenda at this time.
Thank you. Vice President Sutter?
None, thank you.
All right, and I have none either. So it looks like we had a request for, I think Director Stanley made a motion and Director Weiner seconded it. But I do have a question about having a closed session with Mick, since Mick is technically not an employee, so I'm not really sure we can do that. Can you clarify that, Mick?
Yeah, you do have the authority to do that. I'm filling the role of board attorney, and that is allowed under the Brown Act.
Under what, I'm sorry?
Brown Act allows it. Government Code Section 54957. It's permissible.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, so is it proper to take a vote here on that?
I think, well, good question, because this is only to put items on a future agenda. So yeah, you can, but then I could be placed on a future agenda at your convenience.
All right, so the item's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this?
clarification, a point of order on that, or point of clarification. So, Mick, you said we could add it to a future agenda item. What would actually be the agenda item we're adding?
Can you hear me? Okay, I wanted to make sure I was on. It would be personnel evaluation of the public employee, because I am an employee for purposes of the Brown Act, performance evaluation under Government Code Section 54957.
So it would come at the beginning of the agenda under closed session, like other times?
Or at a special meeting to do it either way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification. No other questions, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director Cepeda. All right, so I guess we'll go to a roll call on this.
Yes.
President Alvarado?
No.
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 Vice President Sutis?
I don't even know what we're voting on.
To evaluate Mick at a closed session meeting.
No.
Director Weiner?
Yes.
Director Stanley? Director Stanley? Director Stanley? She's on mute.
Director Stanley?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't find a thing.
Director
Yes,
Cepeda?
and
Director Cepeda?
I'm just trying to figure out what we're evaluating Mick for his, sorry, just trying to figure out more context of it. What exactly are we doing? Was there something wrong with Mick that we need to evaluate like we did last time, or is it?
I don't recall we ever have. And so I'm asking that the board evaluate his, him on his performance. And generally, an employee is not within our purview, but Mick is an exception to that. So I'm interested in doing that because Director Stanley's interested in doing that, and Mick is interested in doing that. So that's why
I guess that's the confusion. Is this something new? I guess that's my confusion. This is something we're doing. This is not something we've ever done before, right?
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yes, and you see, here's my objection with this. At this point, Mick is our attorney, and we're going through. The board has voted. Ad hoc committee recommended, and the board voted to go out for an RFP/RFQ process for the board attorney. It has nothing to do with his performance or anything like that. The board, the ad hoc committee, and the board, the majority of the board, figured that he's been our attorney for many, many years, and there hasn't been a process in place for that. And through my experience, an attorney is usually with an agency no more than 5 years. So this process we're undertaking, that doesn't mean that he's disqualified from applying for the RFP/RFQ. So I just don't see the necessity in doing this. So the vote is up.
Yeah, I just think the timing is, I just didn't understand what we were doing it for. It's mine.
So Seychelles, the vote is up to you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out the why, because I wouldn't just bring up an employee's unless that individual has been doing something wrong. Why are we moving to evaluate the person unless it's also just a standard process? Do we do that? Do we have a process written for that in anywhere for any of our employees that says every year, or again, these are processes that we don't have that we should probably have somewhere, be able to learn from that.
We voted today in that process.
Mick would like to have an evaluation, so why not give him one?
I'm going to vote yes to be able to have that evaluation. but also be able to write it into a process is what I'm going to be looking forward to for any future board attorneys or, whoever in years to come. We need to have a process. If we don't have one, it's frustrating that we don't have a lot of different processes, and this being one of them. So just to be able to get us into the right direction, I will vote yes for this one.
I would like to also make a motion to support Harry's desire for a presentation. Just putting it out there.
I'm sorry, which one of the three things that I asked for are you talking about?
It's the one where you went to a presentation on something, and I forget what it was, but I remember.
It's out of order, Mike. There's a motion on the floor right now. We have to finish that vote.
Yeah.
Unless you're making an amendment, then you're going to mess up the process of it.
President Alvarado, I just wanted to add one comment regarding what Director Zepeda just said. Is that okay?
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah. We do have but one evaluation, and that's the general manager, and that's our only employee evaluation. So we do have that as a precedent for doing evaluations, but we only have two. There's only two positions that answer to the board for the board's business, and that would be the GM and the lawyer. So
yeah,
we do have a precedent for doing that.
All right, thank you, Director Weiner. And like I said, I want to reiterate again. I don't think we should be doing this, but the board has spoken. It seems so. There was a lot of discussion, so I'm going to ask to take the roll one more time. This time, just a yes or no, please.
President Alvarado.
Wait. Let me just say, can I say something?
Sure.
Because Harry just brought that up. Director Weiner just brought that up about the precedent that set with the general manager, and I just want to say the general manager also has the board evaluation built into her contract.
Right.
Have that luxury into the contract with not that I saw. So that's why I'm saying I don't understand what's going on. So I don't care about giving anybody an evaluation who asks for it, but I go back to what Director Zepeda just said, there's no process. So if we're going to do something, let's build a process. And I don't like building processes in the middle of the stream. So if we're going to do something, build an actual process. Not because somebody has a whim all of a sudden. Build a process. I'm a very process-oriented person, and I don't like being forced into something where there's no process. Thank you very much.
Ms. Sutter. Once again, roll call, yes or no only, please.
President Alvarado.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Vice President Sutter.
No.
Director Stanley.
Yes.
Director Weiner.
Yes.
Director Zepeda.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item 9, adjournment.
Thank you.
What about my wanting to support Harry's thing to be put on a future agenda item?
Yeah, we'll discuss that at the next meeting. Thank you. It's late. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks.
I know.